Have you ever noticed that one person who goes totally quiet during small talk? Everyone's laughing about the weather or some celebrity drama, and they're just somewhere else. Not bored, not rude, just lost in their own head. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, they say one thing that makes everyone stop and think. You know that person? Yeah, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's you. But here's the thing. Deep thinkers don't just think differently. Their brains actually work in a totally different way. And what looks like overthinking or being weird, that's actually something way more interesting. Stick with me, because by the end, you might finally understand why your mind works the way it does, or why that quiet person sees things nobody else notices. For some deep thinkers, it starts with a question nobody else is asking. Picture this. You're at a family dinner. Someone says something simple like, everything happens for a reason. Everyone nods, makes sense, right? But there's one person at the table who doesn't nod. They're sitting there, fork halfway to their mouth, suddenly frozen, because in their mind, a storm just started. Does everything really happen for a reason? What does that even mean? Is it fate? Just luck? Are we making up patterns that don't really exist? And now they're 3 layers deep into big questions, while everyone else is passing the salt. Psychologists call this high cognitive complexity. That's a fancy way of saying their brain sees layers where others see surfaces. Most people process something and move on, but deep thinkers, their brain won't let them move on. It pulls them deeper. They question things. They notice when things don't match up. They can't just accept stuff because their mind automatically searches for the real truth underneath. And here's the thing, this isn't a choice, it's exhausting. Because while everyone else is living in the moment, they're living in a maze of their own thoughts. Does that sound familiar? Maybe it's you sitting at that table, wondering why your brain won't just relax. Then there's the deep thinker who feels everything too much. They don't just think deeply, they feel deeply. You tell them a story about your day, something small. Maybe you got stuck in traffic or had a weird talk with someone. And while you're already laughing it off, they're still sitting with it. Not because they're nosy, but because their brain is connecting your story to 100 other things. They're thinking about how that moment made you feel, what it says about people, how it connects to something they read once or experienced years ago. Psychologists say this comes from high emotional intelligence plus intense thinking about feelings. These are people who don't just hear your words, they absorb the feelings behind them. They notice the pause before you speak, the change in your voice, the thing you didn't say. And because they're so aware of emotional stuff, they also feel their own emotions super strongly. A single comment can send them into hours of thinking. A movie scene can stick with them for days. They're not being dramatic. Their brain just doesn't do shallow things. Everything hits deeper. Everything stays longer. And honestly, that's both a gift and really hard. Because while they understand people in ways others don't, they also carry emotional weight that most people just shake off. But here's where it gets interesting. There's another type of deep thinker who doesn't care about feelings at all. They care about systems, patterns, logic. You ask them a simple question like, which restaurant should we go to? And suddenly they're building a mental checklist. How close is it? What are the reviews? What's on the menu? How much does it cost? How long is the wait? You just wanted tacos. They're doing a full analysis. This is the analytical deep thinker. Their brain is obsessed with understanding how things work, not just on the surface, but down to the details. Why does this happen? What's the real cause? How do all the pieces fit together? Studies show that people with this mindset have something called a need for cognition. That means their brain actually craves solving complex problems. While some people avoid hard thinking, these people love it. They read instruction manuals for fun. They love puzzles and debates. But here's the downside. They can seem cold or emotionless. Because when everyone else is making decisions based on feelings or vibes, they're over here breaking down reality like a math problem. And socially, that can be lonely, because people don't always want the most logical answer. Sometimes they just want you to pick the restaurant. And then there's the deep thinker who lives in their imagination more than real life. You're talking to them, and you can tell they're only half listening, not because they don't care, but because while you're talking about weekend plans, they're building entire worlds in their head, scenarios, possibilities, different realities. What if I said this instead of that? What if that conversation went differently? What if I lived somewhere else, had a different job, made different choices? This is the creative deep thinker. Their mind doesn't just think, it creates. They're writers who never write the book, philosophers without the degree, inventors without the resources. Their brain is constantly running tests, trying ideas, imagining outcomes. Psychologists say this is high openness to experience plus divergent thinking. These people don't just accept the world as it is, they reimagine it constantly. And while that makes them super creative, it also makes them disconnected. Because they're so busy living in the world of what could be, they sometimes forget to live in the world of what is. They miss details, forget plans, zone out mid-conversation. Not because they don't care, but because their mind is always somewhere else, building, dreaming, wondering. Now, here's the part most people don't talk about. Deep thinkers don't just think more, they also think alone. Because the way their mind works, most people don't get it. You try to explain what you're thinking about, and halfway through, you see it in their eyes. Confusion, boredom, that polite nod that says, "I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay." And after enough of those moments, you stop sharing. You keep it inside. Not because you hate people, but because it's easier than trying to explain the depth of your thoughts in normal conversation. Psychology calls this the loneliness of complexity. When your brain works on a different level, connecting becomes harder. You're not better than anyone, you're just different. And that difference can feel heavy. Deep thinkers often feel misunderstood, not because people are mean, but because most conversations stay shallow, and their brain doesn't know how to stay there. So they smile, they nod, they join in, but inside, they're somewhere else entirely. Does that mean they're lonely all the time? No, but they've learned that most people won't follow them into the deep stuff, so they go there alone. And here's what makes deep thinkers so powerful. They see things others miss. While most people skim the surface, deep thinkers dive. They notice patterns in how people act, contradictions in arguments, the hidden feelings in a conversation, the long-term results of a quick decision. They're the ones who ask the uncomfortable questions, who challenge the normal way of doing things, who makes you rethink something you thought was simple. And yeah, that can be annoying. It can make them seem difficult or too intense, but it also makes them the people who change things, who invented stuff, who create, who truly understands. Because depth isn't just about thinking more, it's about seeing more. So, here's the real question. Which type are you? Are you the one breaking down every comment, searching for hidden meaning? The one who feels everything too deeply, carrying emotional weight others forget in seconds? The analyzer, systems and patterns, figuring out how reality works while everyone else just goes with it? Or are you the dreamer, the one building entire worlds in your head while the real world keeps moving without you? Maybe you're all of them. Maybe you're none. But if any of this felt familiar, if you've ever felt like your brain just works differently, like you see things others don't, like you think too much and feel too deeply and question too often, then yeah, you might just be a deep thinker. And that's not a problem. It's not overthinking. It's not weird. It's depth. And the world needs that. If this makes you see yourself differently, or finally understand that one person who never stops thinking, you'll love the other psychology stuff we talk about here. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. We go deep into the kind of psychology that actually explains you.